I never imagined that one evening could rip the curtain off everything I thought I knew about love, family, and loyalty. My name is Sophia. And the night I learned the truth about my parents and the man I was about to marry, the world around me stopped breathing. It began as an ordinary Sunday at our family's house, the smell of baked lasagna drifting from the kitchen, the kind of scent that used to mean comfort, safety, warmth. My mother, Caroline, had that way of humming while she cooked, a soft tune that wrapped the house like a blanket. My father, Robert, sat in the living room, pretending to read the newspaper, though his eyes didn't move from the same line for minutes. I was home for the weekend to finalize details for my wedding to Brandon, the man I thought was my forever. We had been together for 3 years, and I believed in the story we'd written together. The laughter, the long drives, the whispered promises. But that Sunday, that illusion cracked like glass under pressure. I remember walking into the kitchen and noticing the way my mother's hands trembled when I mentioned Brandon's name. Her humming stopped. My father folded his paper, his jaw tightening as if he was bracing himself for a storm. Something in the air felt heavier than the aroma of lasagna and garlic bread. "Sophia," my mother said softly, "there's something we need to tell you." My heart slowed. I could feel it, a slow dread crawling through my chest, but I forced a smile and said, "What is it?" She looked at my father, who gave a reluctant nod, and then she said it, words that burned through the air like fire through dry grass. "Brandon isn't who you think he is." I laughed nervously at first, thinking it was one of those overprotective parent talks. But then her next words shattered everything. "He's your half-brother." My knees went weak. My breath caught somewhere between disbelief and nausea. I stared at her, then at my father, who had turned pale, his lips pressed together, as if silence could somehow rewrite the truth. "You're lying," I whispered, my voice breaking. But my mother's eyes, those same eyes I had inherited, were full of guilt, not malice. "Your father had an affair years ago," she said. "Brandon is the result." The room spun. I stumbled backward, hitting the counter, trying to breathe through the shides of betrayal piercing my chest. The man I loved, the one who had held my hand through everything, who knew my deepest fears, was bound to me by blood. "No," I said again and again, but denial was no shield against the truth. I ran out of the house, my phone in my hand, tears blurring the road ahead. I called Brandon, demanding he come to me, my words breaking into pieces. He arrived within minutes, his face pale when I told him what my parents had confessed. For a long moment, he said nothing, just looked at me with eyes that mirrored my pain. Then he whispered, "I know." The ground beneath me gave way. "You knew?" My voice cracked like thunder. He nodded, tears streaking his face. "I didn't want to believe it. My mother told me years ago, but I thought she was lying. I fell in love with you before I ever confirmed it." The silence that followed was unbearable, heavy with everything we had lost, and everything that could never be. I screamed. I cried. I begged the universe to make it untrue. But truth doesn't bend. I wanted to hate my father, but hate felt too small for the scale of betrayal. I wanted to disappear, but something inside me, a flicker of defiance, kept me from sinking. In the days that followed, I didn't answer calls, didn't open the door. My mother came by every morning, leaving food and notes by my door, while my father stayed away, too ashamed to face me. On the third day, I finally opened one of my mother's notes. It said, "Don't let his mistakes define you." I stared at those words for a long time. Maybe she was right. My father's betrayal had poisoned the roots of our family. But I didn't have to let it rot the branches of my life. I decided to confront him. I drove to my parents' house again, not as a daughter seeking comfort, but as a woman demanding truth. He was in his study, staring at an old photo of me as a child sitting on his shoulders, both of us smiling like we belonged to a world without secrets. "Why?" I asked. My voice was calm, almost too calm. He looked at me, tears filling his eyes. "I was weak, Sophia. I made a mistake that I've paid for every day since. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't destroy your happiness." I stepped closer, the anger still simmering, but beneath it, a strange clarity forming. "You didn't just destroy my happiness. You destroyed trust. You destroyed love. And you destroyed the version of you I used to admire." He nodded, unable to speak. I took a deep breath. "But I won't let your choices dictate who I become." That was the moment I took back control. I left his study with tears in my eyes, but strength in my spine. I packed my bags, ended things with Brandon for good, and moved to a small apartment across the city. It wasn't easy. He and I shared too many memories. But some loves are meant to teach, not to last. I poured my pain into purpose, started volunteering at a counseling center for people recovering from family trauma, and slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt myself. Nights were the hardest. Silence echoed with ghosts of what could have been. But every dawn reminded me that survival itself is a form of victory. I wrote letters to myself, forgiveness letters, promises that I would never settle for half-truths again. I filled my home with plants, music, and light, tiny acts of rebellion against the darkness I'd once drowned in. Sometimes I still hear my mother's humming when I cook, and instead of pain, it brings peace. She too was a victim of my father's choices, and though it took time, I learned to forgive her for her silence. One evening, I watched the sunset from my balcony, and for the first time, I wasn't haunted by the past. I realized that healing isn't forgetting, it's remembering without breaking. Months later, I ran into Brandon by chance at a coffee shop. There was no anger, no awkwardness, just quiet acceptance. We smiled, a small, bittersweet smile that said everything words couldn't. When I left, I didn't look back. For the first time, I felt free. My story didn't end with heartbreak, it began there. Because sometimes life shatters you, just so you can rebuild yourself into someone unbreakable. I learned that pain isn't a punishment, it's a teacher. It strips you bare, forces you to confront who you are when there's nothing left to hold on to. And in that rawness, you find your truth. Today, I stand stronger, not because life was kind, but because I refused to let it break me. I've learned to walk through fire and still find beauty in the ashes. And as I look at my reflection now, I no longer see the girl who was betrayed. I see the woman who rose. My father's mistakes no longer define my worth. My mother's silence no longer echoes louder than my voice. My past no longer chains me, it fuels me. And as I step into every new day, I carry a quiet promise in my heart. I am not my father's sins. I am my own salvation. In the end, I understood that life doesn't break you to punish you. It breaks you to rebuild you into someone stronger, someone wiser, someone unafraid of truth. I learned that pain isn't the enemy, it's the sculptor that shapes your courage. Betrayal may leave scars, but those scars are proof that you survived what was meant to destroy you. I stopped searching for closure from those who caused my wounds and found peace in giving it to myself. Strength, I realized, isn't in holding on. It's in knowing when to let go and still walk forward with grace. The truth set me free, not because it was easy, but because it forced me to see who I truly was beneath all the hurt. A woman unbroken, reborn from her own fire. And that's the lesson I carry now. Life will test you, love will fail you, people will disappoint you. But if you can stand after the storm, if you can still choose to rise, then nothing and no one can ever take your power again. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? Drop a comment below and let's talk. Your stories matter, and I'm grateful for every one of you who listened. Remember, sometimes the hardest truth leads to the strongest you.